has expired. Senator Siewert.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. I rise to contribute to this debate because I agree and agree with this proposition that there is an impact of the Abbott government's proposed budget cuts on pensioners, families and young job seekers. Now, an impact can be positive or it can be negative. In this case, they are extremely negative. It's widely recognised, and the inquiry into the budget cuts delivered through the Social Security, Social Services Bills 1 and 2 clearly showed, every witness, all the submissions except for the government's, showed the negative impacts of this budget on pensioners, families, young people, single parents, their families. It is endless in terms of the impacts that this budget will have, because some of the cuts don't actually cut in until 2017, because the government thought they were being really smart. They promised they wouldn't make cuts to pensions. So they think they can fool Australians by saying, oh, don't worry, the indexation measure, which ACOS calculates will cost about, when it kicks in and the full ramifications of it kicks in, will decrease pensions by $80 a week. Now, the government's trying to be very cute and say, but that's not a cut. Well, I'm sorry, in everybody else's definition, that is a cut. When you take money out of people's pockets through legislative change, that is a cut. They've also increased the retirement age. Now, if you are having a proper legislative approach, a proper fully considered approach to the way that you deal with and the way we address retirement age, some people might think raising the retirement age to 70 could be reasonable if you dealt with all the ramifications. The simple fact is the government hasn't dealt with the ramifications. They seem to ignore the fact that older Australians are falling out of the workforce and not being able to regain employment because of age discrimination, because of the need for training and skill development, which they're being denied. That raising the retirement level means you condemn people to living on New Start, which is now $170 below the age of pension. So older Australians cop it through this budget in from a number of ways, not to mention, of course, impact of co-payments and other measures that are contained in the budget. When we were looking at the Senate inquiry, St Vincent de Paul made a number of organisations made very good submissions, but St Vincent de Paul, of course, also made a good submission and raised and articulated the issue around the modelling that NatSem had done. And they said that it made it clear that this budget is raising revenue by taking income from disadvantaged people in far greater proportions than from the affluent. As a result of the changes to pensions, family allowances, unemployment benefits and other social security payments, the poorest 1 in 5 Australian families will be hit by up to 10.8% of their income in 2017-18. By contrast, the richest families can expect to forego a maximum of 1.7% in that same period. Now, we just listened to Senator Mason's contribution when he was talking about robbing future generations. That is a complete nonsense argument when you look at the fact that the government is actually ignoring revenue measures that are here and now that they could use to raise revenue, so that we didn't make the poorest, most vulnerable members of our community pay for their ideologically driven decisions, because that's what this is about. This isn't about reducing debt. This is about their ideological agenda to get those that they see are making a lifestyle choice to live on income support. That phrase has been repeated in this place a number of times. There's comments made about young people living on the couch instead of getting work. That is so far from the truth, it is laughable. The whole concept, and they talk about in this place, and they've done it at 10 today, about handouts. No. We have a social security safety net to help people that are unemployed, to help the most vulnerable in our community. They choose to take the approach of demonising those that are in unfortunately, have not been able to find work, that are unemployed. And instead of offering supports and proper case management and proper training and access to proper training that's going to help people into work, they choose to demonise people and put even more barriers in their way, which is why when you look at the impact on young job seekers, it really has to be the cruelest budget measure, dumping young people under 30 onto no income support. Nothing, zilch. For 6 months waiting period, but it's not just a waiting period, this will be rotational, so if they're unlucky enough not to find work in that first 6 months, they'll be doing work for the dole with no proper training support there, and then they'll be back onto no income support. Poverty is one of the biggest barriers to overcome to be able to find work. If you have no money, how can you even buy the basic essentials? What the government's cleverly done is saying, oh, you can go and get emergency relief. We've given a bit more money for emergency relief. They don't mention, unfortunately, which they should in their next breath, is that, oh, we've cut that money out of the Department of Social Security's discretionary grants program. So, in fact, we haven't given more money. We've just taken more money away from another program that might provide that help. How do you look for work, put in 40 applications, as the government still says is what they're going to be doing, a month? How do you do that when you don't know if you're going to have a roof over your head, if you're going to be able to maintain your accommodation? All your energy is consumed living day to day. That's one of the biggest barriers they're going to put in the place of young job seekers. And then, of course, we go to the impacts on single parents, because not content with starting the attack on single parents, which they did, the Conservatives did under the Howard government. Not content to let the cuts that then the Gillard government made, they have to hit single parents and their families yet again, because the indexation reductions that they're making to pensions, for those on parenting payments, single and parenting payments, they hit straight away. So they don't even have the decency to wait to 2017 when they're lowering the indexation for the rest of for other pensions. They're lowering them straight away. Another cut to income support for single parents who are raising the next generation. So when Senator Mason talks about impacting on future generations, they are impacting on future generations with these budget cuts, because they are damaging the prospects of those young people, because we know what growing up in poverty does for young lives. It can affect your prospects for the rest of your life, and that's what they've been doing to the single parents of this country and their families, because when they talk about single parents, they conveniently seem to forget that being a single parent means you have children you are trying to raise, and when you cut the support for single parents, it actually means you're cutting the support for their children as well. Those single parents deserve our support. And we know, we're starting to see the impacts of the cuts that the previous governments have made to single parents. We know that many of them are already worse off. And not content to just cut the funding they're getting, they're also cutting the pensioner education supplement. And what do you think that's going to do to the prospects of single parents when they are trying to raise their family? Sometimes they're trying to manage a part-time job and improve their education so they can get a better job, so they can raise their children not in poverty, so that they can afford access to activities that other people take for granted. People with disabilities access that pensioner education supplement. And that's again where this budget is going to hit, because they're targeting people with disabilities as well. And it was no coincidence that the front page of the paper was running articles demonising people with disabilities at the time this budget came out, bringing out these draconian measures. This budget will adversely impact on young people, pensioners,
Order,
families.
Senator. It being 6:50, we will now move to